Welcome in, everybody, to another wonderful episode of Spectre and Spooks podcast. I am your host, evidential medium Brooke Ashley, coming to you live with another fantastic show tonight. Tonight, I have my incredible, esteemed colleague and wonderful friend that is joining us. She is a psychic medium who is absolutely phenomenal and does incredible work inside of missing persons cases. Tonight, we are introducing Tamara J. Scott to the stage. Hi, Tamara. How are you doing tonight?
Hi, Brooke. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. I'm so glad to have you here because I feel like you have so much to offer this incredible world of not only psychic mediumship, but this niche kind of space of mediumship inside of missing persons cases. So I know that you kind of do the gambit. You are a psychic medium,
Yes.
but working in these missing persons cases is something that I find you to be so incredible at, and it kind of separates you a little bit from other psychic mediums in that way. So why don't you tell our audience tonight a little bit about yourself?
Thank you. I have been a medium since about 2001. That's when I really discovered that I was a medium. Before that, always intuitive, empathic, all of those, psychic, all of those things. And then mediumship opened up to me in 2001. And I spent probably 4 or 5 years just working on developing myself in that capacity. And then the opportunity to work on missing person cases came along. So I've been doing that for more than 20 years. And so most of the work that I do is focused on missing person cases. And I just recently started teaching this year as well, other intermediate and advanced mediums to do what I do. And then I also give readings to clients. So I have, it's very interesting though. It's usually folks that are at a fork in the road. Like, it's not just, yes, it can be straight up mediumship, but a lot of times it's so weird how the universe and how these people find me. They're like, I'm at a fork in the road. I'm like, God, am I the fork in the road medium? Whatever,
Yes.
You never know. You never know how they, and so that's what I do. I really help people with wisdom readings and of course, straight up mediumship readings. Love to talk to your dead relatives and your guides and angels in the spirit world. But, so that's a piece of it too. So what I get excited about is I'm never bored. I've always got something going on. And things are always changing. So it's always exciting no matter what we're doing.
God, I love that. That's the best, right? I mean, and you've been in this world for so long. I feel like it's probably morphed and changed, but I kind of want to talk about or ask you how you got started in missing persons cases to begin with. Like, how did you end up in that space?
Yeah. Amazing story. I was working in corporate America. I was a huge executive, and I was flying to Arizona to go meet with some of my staff there. And I landed, went to my hotel to check in. And as I go up into the lobby, there was a red carpet with an awning over it. And this guy was out vacuuming the red carpet. So I go up past him and I get almost to the automatic opening doors and there's a white feather there. So I stoop down and pick it up. I go in, I check in. I come back out. There's another feather outside the door and I'm looking up in the awning. There's no birds. So I go to the car, get my luggage, come back up, and the guy is winding up the cord to his vacuum cleaner. At this point, I go back up and there's another feather. I now have three white feathers. Okay. So I go into the hotel room, drop off my bags, go out for dinner, come back. No more white feathers that night, thank goodness. And I go into my room, shower, put on my pajamas, and I see that the light is on saying that I have a message at the front desk. And I'm looking back, and this is like 2005. So I'm looking down and I'm like, okay, call the front desk. And I'm like, hi, you have a message for me. And they're like, yeah, we have a book here for you at the front desk. And I'm like, what do you mean a book? Who's it from? They're like, we don't know. It was just left here and it's for you. I'm like, okay, I'll pick it up in the morning. So I basically, got up the next morning, got ready, went to go check out. And I said, they said, you have a book for me. And they're like, yeah, here you go. And I'm like, well, who left it? They're like, we don't know. We weren't working last night. We don't know. It's just for you. So I go back to the airport, drop off the car, get on the plane, start flying home. And I start reading this book. It's a paperback. And it's about this woman who basically worked with law enforcement and Native Americans and had a Native American background, which I do, believe it or not. But I do. And the sign that spirit would always give her was 3 white feathers, and or white feathers, and she worked on missing person cases. And 3 months later, I had my first missing person case.
Oh my God.
So the spirit world was giving me a heads up that this is what I was going to be doing. And I know it just gives you goosebumps, doesn't it? It's so crazy. Like they gave me a heads up. I'm like, okay, whatever. And so that was it. 3 months later, I had my first case and I had no idea what I was doing. I was an organic self-taught medium until 3.5 years ago. I hadn't had any I read every single book I could get my hands on. But, back in the day, there wasn't just like workshops and there wasn't Zoom. And so you couldn't just have a class. You had to figure it out on your own. You had to work with spirit. You didn't have a choice, man. It was figure it out.
Yep.
And so that's what happened. And so I started working with cases in the spirit world in 2005. And then they just kept coming. And for the first 17 years, I worked exclusively with law enforcement. So the first time I really worked with a family was about 3.5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Whole different
Totally
different
fish.
Totally different method, totally different skills needed, totally different length of time you have to give to a case. Law enforcement, it is quick. It is super fast. You get a phone call, they say, here's what we have. They give you nothing. They give you no feedback. Then they go away. Then the phone rings again and they're like, what else have you got? Because now all the evidence you gave them is now coming through in either things that were on, phone logs or bank accounts, or they found a car or they found this or that. So it's always interesting. So law enforcement, super quick. You're done. Family cases, working with families, it's much longer because there are so many different phases of the case.
Yeah. So if you were going to break down in 2 categories, the differences that you can expect to see when you're working with law enforcement as opposed to the family, what would be those differences?
Huge difference. And that there's a complete different vocabulary that you use with law enforcement. So you can be really graphic about what has happened, and they want you to be graphic. You need to be concise. No woo-woo stuff, no woo-woo language. They don't want to hear that your guide, told you wah wah wah, and you're getting a song with lyrics and all kinds of that. No, they want actionable intelligence. They want just the net, no woo-woo stuff, and stuff that they can validate that no one else knows.
Yeah.
And so that is the super easy part. So I always
Who,
thought
what,
it was
when,
just
where, why.
who, what, when, where, why. That's it. That's all they need. And what else have you got? And where's the evidence? And are they alive or dead? And where is this? And they will try to trick you.
Yeah.
They try to play stump the medium for sure. And so, at the end of the day, I'm like, no, that's not accurate, or that's not right, or that's not relevant. And they'll give it a go, but so that is, and there's a whole different vocabulary. So you can be incredibly graphic about what they've done to the poor victim. And with a family, completely different. When you meet a family who is currently experiencing a missing loved one, they're always going to assume that person is alive, always. And I mean, even if it's been months and months or 20 years or 40 years, until remains are recovered and a DNA test is confirmed, they're going to think that person is going to come through the doorway and still be alive. And they'll make up all kinds of interesting stories about where their loved one is or what they're doing. So, because it's hope. And so it's just really difficult when you meet with a family initially on a case, and you have to basically give them a death notification and say, I'm really sorry to tell you this, but your loved one is in the spirit world and they're with, your mother named blah, 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 or your grandmother or their grandmother or whomever. And then, they'll go, okay, but they're still going to hold out hope.
Right.
So I'm going to say, working with law enforcement, incredibly clinical, incredibly straightforward, no woo-woo. Working with a family, incredibly emotional. It's going to require all of your empathic skills, all of your
Ethics.
grief counseling. Ethics are huge.
Mhm.
Ethics are huge because I have seen every case I've worked on with a family, they have all been contacted by either a medium who says for $10,000, I'll tell you where your loved one is, and or professional scam artists who call them because they're able to glean so much information about the case from the internet and other sources. They make it sound really plausible. And they're like, for X amount of cash. But I've also had people be approached and saying, if you give us drugs or if you give us guns, we'll tell you where the remains are. So, this has been an education.
Yeah, I can only imagine how
Yeah.
wild it can get because you're dealing with a world where it can get pretty mucky. Sometimes it gets really seedy. I mean, we're talking about people who more than likely have been murdered. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yes.
More than
Yes.
likely, not always, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it can get dark and there can be a
Yes.
lot of dynamics that go along with those cases. And, I think the next thing I might actually move into is let's talk a little bit about ethics. What does that look like with this type of case, these types of
Yeah.
mediumship cases? Because they're not just mediumship. It's not, you're just
No,
not a reading. It's so much more dynamic than that. And I feel like the stakes are even higher.
they are huge. And from your own standpoint, you have to realize that you have a lot of different constituencies that you're serving. So you have the family, first of all, and you've got to help guide them and protect them through this process. And then, two, you have law enforcement. And in the United States, and actually in any other country that I've encountered so far, there are no legal laws that allow you to provide psychic or intuitive or mediumship information to any law enforcement officer. And in fact, um, the reason I get phone calls and they're off the books and they don't want anything in writing and whatever is because there is no legal mechanism for us in the United States to provide this information.
Right.
Because it could throw the case out if they get a perpetrator and he ends up being guilty. And, so you end up with legal ramifications, not only from the prosecuting attorney, from law enforcement. And we'll talk about the perpetrator in just a minute, because that's another interesting part. But so, you're in a lot of gray areas. And I think the very best advice I could say is you've got to be grounded and you've got to have your own good personal ethics so that you can say, I know I'm in a dodgy area right here and I need to tread carefully and I need to be guided by spirit and by my own moral, what is right? How is it correct to proceed here? And it's a gray area. So working with the families is kind of a no-brainer. That one is carte blanche. You're not going to have any problems working with the family because also the family really has limited ability to be able to bring about results. They can't go investigate on their own, or sometimes they do. I mean, they go out and search, search sites and stuff. And I've been with them when they've done that. But for the most part, they can't really take any action. So they're kind of stuck. With law enforcement, huge gray area, big gray area.
Yeah.
The other interesting part is you're also working with the spirit world. So the interesting thing is the ethics of working with the spirit world in all of this, because the victim in the spirit world, if they're deceased, they have their own agenda, which may be different from what the family wants, which may be different from what the victim wants or the law enforcement wants.
Yeah.
So you have a ton of audiences and you're trying to make everybody happy. You got a lot of plates you're spinning on
Yeah.
sticks. And then everybody forgets about the perpetrator, the person
Yeah.
who got us into this situation in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what are their rights? What are their, um, what do we owe them? I mean, I have been asked before to head tap a killer, a man who was put into prison, arrested in one state for super similar activity to what he was suspected from in another state.
Mm-hmm.
So he was in custody, and they basically wanted me to head tap him to say, did he do this and did he do these other cases and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So the question is, you know, we're mediums, and our own ethics are like, you don't violate anybody's personal space.
Right.
So there's a lot of stuff to navigate here. It's not cut and dried. This isn't just like a 30-minute or a 60-minute reading you're giving to some nice person who shows up and just wants to talk to their family members.
Right.
This is very involved, and these are things that I don't think people think about
Right. When they
or
get in.
consider.
Right.
Or they're excited about, I want to do psychic investigation because it's sexy. It's exciting. Everybody's got a podcast for, crime show and whatever.
Right.
And it's like, okay, yeah, it is sexy. It does grab a lot of people.
Attention.
It
Mm-hmm.
grabs attention, but man, the ethics in this are huge. And I would say that for me is one of the biggest foundational things that I teach and try to ingrain in people. And you have to be coming from a place of service.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's the deal. If you start coming at this from an egoic standpoint of, I'm going to be famous, I'm going to be rich. You're not going to be rich doing this, by the way. I volunteer all of my time. So it's one of those things where if you start letting your ego get huge and going, I'm going to be famous doing this and I'm going to be on television or whatever, rug pulling party from the universe, your spirit team is it's just not good. And that's where I really see a lot of people saying, I have to be right as a medium,
Right.
no, this is what I'm seeing, or a psychic. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
and I have seen people just be so incredibly off, but yet they were confident. They just weren't competent. There's a huge difference. So, you gotta be skilled. I
Yes.
mean, and you've got to know that what your team gives you, you trust your team 100%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Your team in the spirit world. You've got to have that. If you don't have that,
You have to have the trust in the spirit world. I feel like that's like kind of the number one thing is the trust with the spirit world, regardless of what kind of reading you're giving. But
totally.
the stakes here are so high. And the fact that you're not going to get answers immediately, you are not going to have that validation immediately. You have to have the trust. You have to have it. It can't
Totally.
not be there. And you're right. When ego comes in and you start to play this kind of God role and you're working from a space that is really more, look what I can do, than it is honesty and service to the family. Do you have a story where, and I know you do because you've told it to me before,
Ah,
but the story where you knew you were right and you got talked out of it
I
and
did.
trust. So could
I
you tell
did.
everybody a little bit about
Yes.
that?
Yeah. Train wreck story. But here's the good news. I'm going to give you the good news first before I tell you my story, is that spirit can fix mistakes. So thank God in this instance, what happened was I was working on a missing person case, and Sylvia Brown, now deceased, bless her
Mhm.
soul, was on television. And my mother had seen what she had said about where this case I was working on, about where the remains were. And that did not match up with what I had gotten. Clear
Mhm.
direction. I'm in the car with the perpetrator, with the victim in the back. I'm going out. I'm driving down the road. I know exactly where this is. I know exactly where this person is.
Mhm.
But my mother calls me and says, "Oh my God, I just saw Sylvia Brown on the news and she just said she's in the water." So what did I do? I basically changed my evidence. And I said, well, I believe she's in the river, or near to it because I had seen all of the other things. And so I just attached that to it. Now, Spirit did fix this. And I learned later why. So it was a huge learning. It was a multiple learning thing, and Spirit could fix my mistake. And basically what happened was the perpetrator in this case was able to exchange telling folks where the body was in exchange for extradition and taking the death penalty off the table.
Okay.
So the good news is the remains were recovered. The perpetrator was able to negotiate a deal and take the death penalty off the table. And I learned a monster lesson. And guess what? She was exactly where I saw she was. Exactly. And so that was the biggest lesson of, wow, I just blew off my spirit team and didn't trust them and didn't trust myself. But that was super early back. That was like long time ago. But that's not to say that I haven't made mistakes since, because, and I don't call them mistakes. We have learning opportunities.
Yeah.
In other words, as long as you learn from whatever you've done, then it's a learning opportunity. If you don't learn from it, then it truly is a mistake, I feel.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes too, you have something happen and you go, wow, I would have never thought to ask that question or that follow-up thing. And now it's like part of my standard stock list of questions of, were the remains moved? You know what I mean? In other words, I know they died here. I know they died here, but the body's not here. And so the next logical question is, have the remains been moved? And not just scattered by animal,
Right.
it's definitely by, has there been subterfuge, or has there been, what's going on here? So always learning. And so the nice thing is that I love to share all of my learning opportunities with the folks that I work with and the students that I teach, because I want to help other people to not make the same mistakes, 20 years worth of learning opportunities. And it's just good to be able to share,
Absolutely. I completely agree. And I think it's like you said, these learning experiences that we have, because that's how you hone in on your connection to spirit world. There's not a medium out there who doesn't like waffle or get it a little bit, you know what I mean? Like it happens, right? But here's the thing, like, I guess if in all of your experience that you've had, I would say if there's people out there who are kind of, they're mediums, they don't have a lot of experience in mediumship, but they're kind of stepping into the mediumship world, and somebody comes to them and says, I have a missing persons case. Do you work on those? What would be your advice for mediums who have zero experience in this field whatsoever, and how they should handle something like that?
Yeah. I would recommend highly that they say, I'm not skilled or trained in that, but I know someone who is. So why not? And I get referrals all the time, from other mediums, from other people, families who've had somebody go missing, from law enforcement. I mean, that's how all my law enforcement cases come, because it's through the grapevine there. There's not like they're going to post me on the bulletin board in the office and go, hey, dead person, you call Tamara, So, and I know that when law enforcement, when they call, they're either open to it, and that's pretty rare. Usually they are stuck, or it's incredibly high profile. So, and they've got a lot of heat on them to get results quick.
Yeah.
And, they're still waiting for like phone logs and, warrants and stuff to come through, and they need actionable stuff that they can move on. So, if you aren't a skilled medium and you don't have any experience in this, I would say, one, I'm super excited that you're interested in this, but two, I wouldn't engage in it until you're skilled. I mean, the thing is, my team told me I was going to be working on this, and then let me tell you, they walked me through it slowly. you
Yeah.
know, and they taught me the method that I use, that
Mhm.
is, um, to date, clear and accurate intel, actionable intelligence that law enforcement and or the family can use to
Mhm.
help move their case forward.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really important because it can be so, I think it can be so easy sometimes for people who are in this world that maybe don't have the experience or the real world experience behind them to jump on something and be like, ooh, let me prove what I can do. And the amount of
Right.
harm that might come from that if you really aren't prepared,
Yeah.
because you have such ABC 1, 2, 3 of
Yeah.
exactly how
Yeah.
you are going to handle a case. It's not like someone just calls and you're like, okay, so this is what I'm seeing. It doesn't work like that with you.
No.
Do you mind kind of talking a little bit about the process that people have to kind of go through to get to a place where you are ready to work on a case?
Yeah. And I really feel like you need to be like an intermediate or advanced medium before you're ready to take classes in this area. You have got to really be able to have a strong spiritual foundation of your own, know how to ground, know how to clear, know how to get really good evidential information when working as a medium. And then you've just got to have the predisposition to be able to do this. If you are squeamish, if icky things freak you out, if you can't watch scary movies or watch a crime show on television, this is not the work for you. I mean, we deal in really awful things, the worst things that a human could do to another human: rape, murder, torture, dismemberment. I mean, you
Yeah.
name it. You see it, hear it, feel it, smell it. I mean, it's all on, and it's not easy.
Yeah.
And I really feel like you have to have a strong spiritual foundation to be able to handle this, because it's not pretty and it's not nice.
Yeah.
And I think that the other interesting aspect of this is, because the actions that were taken against your missing person, if it happens to be a homicide or a murder, or whatever it is, um, if there was another perpetrator involved, then the situation was created in the absence of light. And you have a responsibility to really make sure that your light is as clear and as bright and as clean as possible, so that you don't get sucked in or drugged down, or, in other words, you're here on behalf of the spirit world and of the light to do this work. And I always teach protection techniques, clearing techniques, grounding techniques for doing this, and then how to bring yourself back up after you have worked on a particularly difficult case. Um, it's just not easy. It's heartbreaking,
Yeah. I can.
and it can really, your whole energy field can really be impacted.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Do you have any? I would say, like, I think one thing that helped me a lot was reaching out to other people who are in this world and have been in there longer than me for guidance or ideas as to how to do things like clearing and grounding and getting into that space. But I always like to push, honestly, books. Do you have any books
Ah,
that like you feel would be great assets to people who are in this world or thinking about stepping into the missing person case world that have to do with like strengthening your connection to spirit, clearing or grounding or anything like that? Any resources that might be helpful to people?
yeah. And I would say, if you're interested in doing this work, my very, very favorite book is Chasing Evil by John Edward. So the way he works and the way I work are super, super similar.
Mhm.
And just briefly, John's experience was he worked with one FBI agent exclusively in secret over the course of like 15 years, on various cases. And he doesn't do that work anymore. He only worked with that one person, and that FBI agent has retired. So he doesn't do any of that work anymore. But that gives you kind of an up close real world experience of what his experience was and really what my experience has been over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
So that book is great. As far as grounding, clearing, books, I would say I don't have any books that come to mind quickly on grounding, clearing, whatever. But what I'll do is maybe I'll just shoot a quick 3-minute video and stick it up this month on YouTube, just to let them, just that folks can use for free for how to ground and clear and shield yourself.
Yeah.
But I have found too that in addition to grounding, clearing, protecting yourself, it's finding those things that bring you joy, that can bring you back up after a particularly difficult reading. And that can be, even if it's not a missing person case, but just a regular medium reading that you're giving that is really heavy with somebody who is deep in grief.
Yeah.
And if you deal in just grief all the time, you're in that energy all the time, and it's a lot. So you got to find what brings you joy and happiness. So, if I'm working on a really, really rough case, Downton Abbey reruns, Bridgerton, reading a book.
Yeah.
And I do read mystery and true crime. It's true. It's pretty sick and wrong, but still that's how I got my start back in the day. I've been reading Ellery Queen, Nancy Drew, Hardy Boys, and then on and on through my childhood. Everything was about solving mysteries.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I always tell people, if anybody knew the amount of true crime I watched, they would be like, what is the matter with you? I started watching true crime when I was 11 with my dad and never stopped. And I mean, probably tens of thousands of episodes at this point. And they all kind of stick with you in a different way, especially if you're empathic. And
Totally.
they can stick with you. So like you're saying, like, even if you, like, this is a real thing that you're in and you have a grieving family with you, it can stick in your energy in even a more palpable way than just like watching true crime. And how you can't really take it after you watch it. It's even more than that, right?
Yeah, it's huge because also true crime, it's a 30-minute or a 60-minute show and everything is all tied up in a neat bow after 60 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I can absolutely guarantee you that not true. I had a case resolve in 8 hours. That's my fastest one. So missing 15-year-old live girl, thank goodness. Yay.
Yeah.
Found and returned. Yeah, she was found within 8 hours and then she was returned home the next day because she was quite a ways away. So they got her home the next day. But so fastest case, 8 hours. But folks, it doesn't happen like that. It's not neat and tidy. It takes a lot of twists and turns. There's a lot of time where you have gaps between when you work on a case.
Mm-hmm.
I've had cases that have been 3 days, cases that have been 3 to 6 months, cases that are still ongoing after 15 years.
Yeah.
And the challenge is it takes a lot of people to resolve a case. And so if the family wants their remains back, and exactly where the remains are, but they already have the killer in prison and he's got a life sentence. Well, they're not going to go dig up the body because what if it undoes the conviction?
Right. Right. There's a lot of politics is
Politics.
It's unreal. And I'm sure that you've seen things that turns your stomach into the point where you're like, what are we even doing in this planet? Like, why are we even here? Yeah.
It's so hard because, and especially I think the difficult thing is I work on a lot of cases where the missing person was a drug user
Mm-hmm.
or a sex worker
Mm-hmm.
or a minority
Mm-hmm.
or women and children. And if they don't look like your typical American blonde hair, blue eyed JonBenet Ramsey,
Yeah.
it's not going to grab the headlines and it's not going to get the resources and it's not going to get the attention.
Right.
And that's just the truth.
Yeah.
And it hurts. There's only so much time and resources in which to last year alone, 2025, 600,000 people went missing. Thank God most people were found quickly. But
Mhm.
to this date, 25,500 people just from last year alone still missing.
Yeah.
So time and resources, you want to find everybody. But that's not always the case.
No.
So I'm going to say the higher profile cases where somebody is prominent, they're going to get all the money, they're going to get all the resource.
Mhm. Yeah.
So it's just a sad case. And so I guess I'm always a big, you know, supporter of the underdog. And so I'm always the one out there going, no, everybody matters or no one matters.
Right.
And so, I don't care if your loved one was a sex worker. I don't
Yeah.
care. It doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is, can we get them back home? Or can we find the perpetrator? Or can we get justice? And to me, it's just like whatever is needed. And so, but it's tough. And I would say that, I've worked with law enforcement extensively, and just like every single profession, there are folks who are more involved, more engaged, and want to do the right thing. And then there are those who are like, well, maybe that person got what they deserved because they were
Yeah.
dealing drugs, using drugs, they were a sex worker. So, there's all walks of life.
Mhm.
And it's tough to see. So if I can help move things forward or bring some type of resolution for the
Mhm.
family, then I will.
Yeah.
So
Thank God for someone like you, honestly, because
it's
we need
just,
people like that. You need people like that. It's because it takes a team, right? So to have someone like
yes.
you that cares, maybe paired up with like a detective who feels the same way that you do, or a DA that feels the same way that
And
you
I
do,
get those. I get those for
you
sure.
know,
I
it's
do get
important
those.
because it's like I think that sometimes people, especially if they don't watch a lot of true crime, can't see the politics that can happen. That where it's just like, well, why are we not bringing this case to court? And it's like you're just like, okay, I see what's happening
Yeah.
here.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. Yep. But I even had politics happen inside of families. So it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
One side of the family is embarrassed because the missing person was a sex worker,
Mm-hmm.
and they were an embarrassment to the family, didn't want the case pursued, actually convinced law enforcement to not investigate.
Mm-hmm.
Then it ended up getting elevated to the state police because the rest of the family did want it investigated. So you see politics happen even within families. So it's not just law enforcement, it can happen anywhere. So navigating these cases really requires you to just, be on your A game
Yeah.
and being able to adapt and change to the circumstances depending on what's going on. But all that said, I can tell you the best damn feeling in the world is when you found a missing person. And every single time I cry like a baby. I just cry. And
Yeah.
I'm so grateful and I'm so relieved and I'm so in awe of the spirit world that they have helped me. Well, or
Yeah.
that I've helped them, or that I've helped. You know what I'm saying? Just my humble role in the whole thing. You just feel so, I don't know. It's the craziest thing ever, but you can't replace that feeling. It's priceless. Do you know what I mean? Like no amount of money in the world can replace that feeling.
Yeah.
And even the cases where it's just you're giving a family peace because they want to know, can who is the perpetrator and can we get justice for our loved one, even
Mhm.
though we have the remains back? And the answer is no. The perpetrator was her drug dealer and he's already dead and in the spirit world with her, so there's no justice to be had.
Right.
But guess what? After 10 years, that frees that family to say, okay, we can let go. And the victim is saying, I need you to let go. You need to move forward with your lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have seen unbelievable healing happen in a lot of these cases,
Yeah. It's
you
beautiful.
know. and for wherever things are at. And you want to know something? Some cases will never be resolved.
Yeah.
And you have to be okay with that too. It sucks. I'm not happy with it. But it's a reality that you've got to finally accept because, you
Yeah.
know, and cases don't resolve in your time frame.
Right.
You know, they just don't. So you got to be okay with just showing up and doing what you can when either spirit asks you to, or the family asks you to, or law enforcement asks you to. And I mean, it's crazy. All of a sudden, I'll be in my kitchen making tea, and I've got a spirit standing there going, "Hey, I need you to do blah blah blah." Okay,
Yeah.
and then they communicate with me through the Daily Mail out of the UK, like for some weird odd reason, like cases that I will have been working on, all of a sudden they're in the day. I'm like, oh, I guess I'm re-engaging on this case again. And it's like, so it's so funny how the spirit world, and they're like, we need your help. You need to get back to work on this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, don't
Guess I'll,
forget, I'm here.
yes,
Hi.
right. Because there are cases I have here that are just in holding pattern.
Yeah,
So it's
absolutely.
super fascinating how they reel me back in and go, it's time to go back to work on this one.
Right. And it's amazing how the spirit world knows who's there for them, that you're there for them, that
Yeah,
you're connected, that you can connect to them, you can see them, feel them, hear them, all of these things. And that creates this connection between the two of you, your souls, where they just kind of become a part of your family a little bit, they're a part of your story. So these people who've been maybe forgotten or they're missing or whatever almost become a fabric of like your story and who
they
you
do.
are
They
whenever,
do. Oh
Yeah.
no, I mean they are like a part of my soul. And the families that I've worked with are like my family members. Do you know what I mean? Like we
Mhm.
always end up we end up just waiting. Oh, wait. And Gwendolyn is like, how long can that holding pattern take? Oh, I've had holding pattern of cases for a couple of years, but I've had holding pattern just be a couple of weeks. So
Mhm.
it varies. It depends on the case. So it's
Mhm.
kind of one of these things where you're just kind of like medium on standby.
Yeah.
I'm just here on standby. Okay, well, who needs me? Who do I need to serve? Who do I need to serve today? And
Right.
that's kind of the funny part of it. And so I don't know. To me, it's fascinating. And the more I learn, the more I know that I don't know anything.
Right.
The more I know, the more I don't know. So 20 years in, I'm like, God, I feel like I've only scratched the surface.
Yeah.
So right now, and what happened was because I was all self-taught and with my team that taught me this, 3.5 years ago, I took a psychic investigation class. I'm like, what is everybody else doing out there? Because I was curious. I was still working in corporate America, hiding in a medium closet. Nobody knew what the hell I did nights and weekends. I was like Clark Kent. Go to work during the day, corporate America, do my thing, come home at night, work on missing person cases, right? I mean, how insane is that? So nobody knew. Um, and so it was really wild and so self-taught. So 3.5 years ago, I'm like, well, what does everybody else do? And I took a psychic investigation class, and the class was good. It had good content and good material. Then they had a psychic investigation circle that you could join. And initially, it was just people from the actual class. So everybody had the same training, and everybody was at about the same level mediumistically. What happened was the class was then open to anybody who just wanted to show up and participate and pay the fee. I watched the craziest things happen there. And so I would see cases, we would be working on a case and like groups of mediums would come up with like four different theories or four different things. And I'm like, oh, now I get what law enforcement is talking about when they're going, we don't know what the hell to do. We're working on a case. We've got tip line. I've got 20 mediums who've called in or psychics or intuitives or whomever. 50% think they're alive, 50% think they're dead. Three think they're
Mhm.
at the bus stop, two think they're with Elvis, and somebody's wearing a tinfoil hat. And so, right? And so the cops are like, we don't know what to do with this information. They don't know how to work with mediums.
Right.
And they don't know they don't have any tools in order to sort through all of that.
Yeah. I know that I felt confused when I went into a course and I was having the same
Right.
thing happen. I'm like, well, then what's the point? Everybody's getting
Right.
something different. So,
Right.
you
And
know,
so that's when, like, I never thought I would be a teacher. Never thought I would be a teacher ever, ever, ever. And finally I'm going, oh my God, I see what they're talking about. And then I'm like, how do I fix it? How do I try? I can't fix anything, right? Okay. How do I make it better? Or how do I bring awareness to this? Or how to, what can I do? And
right.
that's when they're like, everybody's like, when are you going to start teaching classes? When are you going to start teaching? And I'm like, oh, geez. All right. So what the difference between like missing person mediumship and psychic investigation is I lead with mediumship first. Because
Mhm.
why wouldn't you go directly to the source of the missing person, whether they're alive or dead?
Mhm.
So as a medium, you got to figure out, am I talking to somebody alive or dead? That's number one.
Yeah.
And then two, because if they're alive, you're really working with their higher selves or their guides.
Yeah.
But this is stuff you got to train for, or stuff you got to know about, or stuff you just got to ask questions about. How am I getting information?
Right.
And that's the fascinating thing. I've been really watching other people. They don't analyze how they work and what they do. I love to watch other mediums because I'm curious. I'm like a total voyeur about,
Yeah.
damn, how did they get that? Ooh, that was interesting. Whoa. I'm like curious. So yeah, I'm like a total geek. I totally geek out on that.
Yeah.
So I'm fascinated by that. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of psychic investigation classes just teach, well, here are a bunch of tools that you can use,
Right.
but there's not a method. So for me, it's always straight up mediumship first with the victim. There is no online searching. In fact, I will tell anyone on the planet, the very, very last thing you do ever, and it's way far down the road, is ever get on the internet. Don't ever read chats. Don't read the news. Don't feed the medium.
Yep.
Once you start getting all that input stuff, your evidence goes
Yeah.
sideways. Your
Yeah.
evidence goes toast.
Yep.
And I've watched that happen because I worked by myself for all those years, never doing any of that stuff. And so then when I started seeing all this happen, and I'm going, why is that happening? So when you had the four groups in the psychic investigation development group, it was fascinating because some people were reading the land
Yeah.
or where the incident happened. They were going, oh, there's a lot of human trafficking here, so I'm getting that. Or they were reading what was out in the media. They were psychically tuning into, well, what's the narrative in the media?
Right.
Or they were pulling into, well, what is the current theory from law enforcement?
Right.
What I noticed was very few people were going straight to the source. Nobody was going straight into the victim mediumship wise. I'm like, God, that's just logical to me. And so
Yeah.
I went, okay, I got to see if I can help shift this
Yeah.
and change the paradigm,
Right. Yeah.
you
Absolutely.
know?
Well, your classes are absolutely amazing. I loved taking your class. I loved being in that space because you're so engaging and you're so like I feel like I'm on the edge of my seat the whole time. Like when I'm like working in that space, because it's you're so passionate about what you do that the
Yeah.
person on the other side of the screen feels it and then they're like in it with you. You know what I mean? And that's the best part about working in a space where you are the teacher in this field because you have the 20 years behind your back. You are, I mean, we worked on that one case I brought to you and you blew my mind. I was like, she is so the real deal. Like, anybody who ever asks me, hey, do you work on missing cases? You are immediately, I said, message me right now. I will get you the email of exactly who you need to speak to because you are absolutely incredible at what you do. And anybody
Thank
would
you.
be lucky to have you on their case because unbelievable the amount of stuff that you get. And you're so fast and you are in there. And I think it speaks to the amount of years that are put into like learning with the spirit, learning with your guides, learning who you are inside of that.
Yeah.
So it's like so important. Like I think it drives me nuts a little bit when I see spaces where someone's like, oh, I'm gonna, teach like a missing investigation person class. And I'm like, you've never even done a missing case in your life. What are you talking about? It's
Yeah.
that makes, I think the journey that mediums need to remind themselves that they're on. It's okay to be on a journey. It's okay to take it slow. It's okay to move in. It's okay to learn from other people. It's
Yeah.
okay to broaden your horizons and think outside the box and go, maybe I don't know everything. Maybe this person has something that they can bring to the table that I didn't think about before.
Yep.
Right. So it's just watching you in a teaching mode when it comes to this stuff is very incredible because you're super thorough and you're super passionate about making sure that people can do this and can do this in a way that is correct across the board
Yeah.
and preparing them for what they're getting themselves into with love. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Absolutely. Thank
Yeah.
you.
How many?
That is.
You're so welcome because it's the truth. I'm just like obsessed,
You're making me blush.
Oh, yeah. How many countries have you worked kind of missing cases in?
I physically, well, one at the moment, Japan. So I actually went to Japan to work on a case. And then what is interesting though is I have had students so far from Australia, Norway, Canada, and then obviously here in the United States. So the nice thing is I also get to learn from my students. So it's so fascinating because I'm learning how their law enforcement works and their opportunities for them to work with law enforcement. And we kind of work around strategies for how this can work in their countries and adapt what I do here in America. I just don't want it to be America centric. I mean, um, that's always something we tend to do. But for me, I get excited about how can we adapt this and make this work in other countries. And so I physically went to Japan to work on a missing person case, and it was a test. It was a trial. And I do field investigation here in the United States on missing person cases. So, a lot of the times I can just work from my desk. You don't have to like. I just do maps and I grid them up and I douse them and I can work that way and I can give folks a return answer really, really quick. But if it's needed, I'm on a plane. I'm going somewhere. I'm gonna go be on site. I'm gonna go help narrow things down.
Right, right.
And when you bring in law enforcement and they've got a cadaver dog team, they trivia, they basically need half of the size of a football field. So you've got to be within like 50 yards in a space, and they really prefer it smaller. So
Yeah.
that's why I flew out to Colorado and basically was there. And basically brought flags and stuck flag. I'll teach you how to do field investigations and the tools and fun things to pack in your suitcase, which is going to look very odd when you check your bag, just saying, with metal detector and strange things. They're like, what are you doing?
This is so
They're
bizarre.
like, are you a contractor? It's, oh yeah, kinda,
Yeah.
yeah,
Contractor for the
ish.
day.
Somewhere along those lines, exactly. So yeah, it's super weird when I show up in town with my suitcase full of fun items. So
Oh my gosh, that's wild. Yeah, so that's one of the things that you kind of teach in your course too, like not just all of this stuff we think about naturally when we think about missing persons cases, but also if you're doing field investigation, how you get into that, how that works, what you need to bring with you, what you need to be prepared for, how you
yep,
need to transfer that information either in real time or something of
yep,
that nature, how to
yep,
document it. It's like really
yep. All
important.
the evidence, what you do with it. Ziploc baggies are my friends. I mean, like all of the crazy things you need. So yeah, we go into all of that. And when is the time to do it and when you don't do it.
Yeah.
And whether you do it with the family or not. I'm going to say it's really difficult if you're doing it with the family because then you're trying to feel into what's going on, not only in the space and work with the victim, but yet you're trying to manage the family too and their emotions and they want to find, but they don't want to find. Because if
Mhm.
they don't find, then they're possibly still alive,
Right.
So it's tough. But I'm gonna say this is some of the most rewarding work and it's definitely not for everyone. And it is super niche. But man, if you are called to this work, please get skilled, because 25,500 people still missing just from last year. We need your help.
Yeah.
It'd be good to have a hand now and again. And I have amazing people like you that have taken my class and have become skilled and have become, you get the soup to nuts. You get every single thing and everything you need for documenting a case and legal things and evidence and how to handle it or not handle it.
Right.
And just all of that stuff that needs to come, all of the things that you just don't think about.
Right. So important. They're just as important because they're high stakes involved. You can't
Yes,
make a mistake. You
you
cannot.
cannot. You
Right.
can't. This is do no harm.
Right.
And uh, you don't want to screw up a possible case of, being able to put the perpetrator behind bars if you've gone out and disturbed evidence and it's not, handled properly. I
Right.
mean, bad, you
Very
know.
bad.
So there's a ton of considerations that I think people say, oh, psychic investigation, that seems so exciting. This sounds very sexy. And oh, I've taken a class online and I've done it. So I should just be able to do this. And it's like, there's a lot more involved.
Yeah.
And I would just say, become skilled. And if you aren't skilled, but if a case comes to you, don't be afraid to call me,
Yeah.
email me, reach out to me, have them fill out. I have a form on my website for
Mhm.
missing person case, free 30-minute consultation. And if I take your case, at the moment, I work for free still. So
Mhm.
if I take your case on, I work for free on it.
Yeah.
And so, if I'm required to travel to a site to go help with recovery or evidence capture or something like that, then then I'm usually paid by the family or by someone for me to appear.
Right.
Um, but there have been times when I was going on vacation in Japan,
Yeah.
and that Japan case came, like the spirit world brought me that case. They're going, oh, she's going to Japan on vacation. Here's this case, bam.
You're just like, well, okay.
I looked at my husband. I said, "We're going to go look for a dead body while we're in Japan." He's like, "Okay." I
Yeah,
mean,
that sounds like your husband.
my husband, yeah, my husband is so fantastic. I mean, he's into Bigfoot and Sasquatch and UFOs, and so I've done my share of all of those things. So when I say we're going on a dead, okay, great. Is it in the wilderness? That's even better. So he's like happy to go. So
Oh
so
my God.
it's so funny because not only does law enforcement or families bring me the case, but the spirit world will bring me cases.
Mhm. Yeah.
So it's really amazing.
They picked you. They like picked you, you
They
know?
did pick me when they gave me that book, and they basically said, "You have been selected." And it's not a surprise.
Mm-mm.
It is not a surprise because there were three traumatic things that happened in my lifetime to really that were life-defining moments that brought me into this work. So I was adopted at birth,
Mhm.
and I know you too. And so I didn't know who I was, what my background was, anything about the circumstances of my birth. And when I was 20, I started searching for my birth parents. And so it took me 7 years. This was before the internet, before DNA, before social media. And I had to do it the old fashioned way. And so it took me 7 years, but I found my birth mother. And
Mhm.
then I tracked down my birth father.
Mhm.
So I solved that mystery of who I am, who do I look like, what is my DNA, what were the circumstances of my birth?
Right.
How could I possibly be Native American? That's not possible. This is the German side of the family coming through for sure. Anyway, so then the funny thing is, the second thing that happened was at 14, my aunt was murdered. So I know what a family goes through when your family's on the front page of the newspaper.
Mhm.
You've got to rehome my nephews. You've got to deal with the estate. You've got to deal with a trial, the DA, all of that. I understand from a family perspective what happens,
Yeah. It's
you
that
know?
space of trauma. Because,
Yes,
I think us as mediums, I think we've kind of all understood that trauma tends to lead us to this space,
it
like
does. It does.
trauma will get you there. I think, and the younger I think you experience the trauma, the more open you become
Yeah.
to the world of the spirit, it's just kind of part of it, right? I don't think I know a single medium who has not dealt with some serious trauma, either loss of someone they loved and it was just they were ripped out from underneath them and just gone and had to deal with that grief, or other types of severe trauma that children may go through. And it just seems to kind of be a running theme, but it proves that we all have this deep within us. It's
Yeah.
all part of the human experience. It's just what's going to jar that kind of quiet thing that we've lost or unlearned over the years. What's going to jar it out of you,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
Right.
And I feel like it's that trauma that
Mhm.
if it is healed, it becomes your superpower.
Yeah.
And then you can use your superpower to be of service to others and to help others on the healing path. You can't heal them, but they can begin to heal themselves
Right.
and they can learn and grow from it. And so I really feel like that's kind of the purpose of our lives, is to come
Yeah.
here, overcome adversity. It's the hero's journey,
Yeah.
you know? And so I just think it's such a blessing and a gift that I can use the tragic things that have happened in my life or the challenging things that have happened in my life that truly I now look back and go, they were a gift.
Mhm.
You know, my 22-year-old friend was kidnapped in broad daylight in Portland, Oregon, while she was on a work call and never heard from again. And she ended up becoming my very first case in 2005 when I was ready.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's our life experiences that spirit also needs to draw on. And I think it's at that point where you just say, okay, spirit, use me however you need to use me, because I've already been through all of this. I've already worked through it. I've healed it. It's now my superpower. It can be used. And you know, the crazy thing is that cases come to me and I always find there is some insane connection with the family or
Mhm.
with the victim. You know,
Mhm.
one of my cases late last year, the gentleman was he was in a wheelchair. He had cerebral palsy. He had leg braces as a child. Well, so did I.
Oh,
And
wow.
so, you know, there were just and then on and on and on. And in every single case, there's a tie. The family's from Oregon. I was from Oregon. You know,
Mhm.
so the spirit world uses those things in you
Mhm.
as a medium to serve the people who are coming to you.
Yeah.
And I'm always in awe. I don't know why, but I'm still gobsmacked like half the time. I'm like, seriously, that was so cool. Like
Isn't it
I just
crazy?
geek out. I'm like, dang, that was pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's these things where you learn as a medium, you learn real fast that there's no such thing as a coincidence. There just isn't. That's just not a thing. If you're a medium, that's not a thing. Coincidence is not it. You know what I mean?
It's just a sign from spirit. We need to totally change the dictionary
Yep,
and
yep. Signs
and
from
just
spirit.
rename it. It's just a sign from spirit. It is not a coincidence.
Right? Exactly. 100% agree with that wholeheartedly. Well, it looks like we're kind of winding down our conversation for tonight, but I would love for you to tell everybody where they can find you, what classes you're doing, how they can connect with you, and all of that before we end tonight.
Thank you. My website is tamarajscott.com. And on there are classes that are available. I'm currently in the middle of teaching a missing person mediumship class now, but you can get on the wait list for the classes that will start next January in 2027. So you can sign up to be on the wait list. If you have a missing person case, either personally, um, basically you can go on and fill out the form. It'll schedule a Zoom appointment with me. We'll chat about your case. And then if I take your case on, we'll move forward from there. So also I have a readings page on my website. You can sign up for a fork in the road reading, but actually it's not. It's whatever you need it to be. It can be mediumship. It can be, you know, life choices. What's my next step? Where do I go? That type of thing. So happy to do any type of reading you wish. And you can also find me on social media, medium Tamara J. Scott. So I post a couple times a week, and so I'm on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram.
Love it. Awesome. Thank you so much, Tamara, for being with us
Thank
tonight.
you
This was
so
an
much.
amazing conversation. Always with you, amazing conversation. And yeah, I will see everybody the next time that we're on for Spectre and Spooks. But you guys can always watch this incredible episode with Tamara back on YouTube at Spectre and Spooks Podcast. It's just one word, Spectre and Spooks Podcast. But thank you again, Tamara, so much for tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.